Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So leading up to the World Juniors, I have been giving out my top 50 prospects in the entire NHL over on my Instagram. We're at like 21 through 30 today, but I thought it'd be a fun idea to do the top 15 on YouTube, break it down one by one, really go in depth on these prospects. And for this, I am counting an NHL prospect as a guy that has played less than 9 NHL games and is not currently with the NHL club. And with these rankings, it's not just who the best player is. That would be kind of lame because then it would be like 2020 and 2021 draftees. It's going to be who I think, but definitely how good they are right now matters, but projecting who I think is going to be the best NHL players. So obviously a 2023 that's on the same level as a 2021 or 2020 is going to be much higher because they have far more potential. So without further ado, let's dive into it. At number 15, I got Olen Zweig. He obviously tore it up at juniors the previous 2 years. He had 52 points in 32 games with the Kamloops Blazers last year. Back-to-back WHL defenseman of the year. He is just oozing with offensive potential, and he makes the switch over to the AHL this year. Not at the NHL level quite yet, but he has 18 points in 22 games. Clearly, his style of hockey, there was some concerns considering his size that maybe he wouldn't translate to the NHL level. Defensively, still has a long way to go, but there is no doubt that this kid has a shit ton of offensive potential. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how he factors in to the Ducks' long-term plans, especially with Drysdale and Mitkov already at the NHL level. But this kid's an utter stud, one of the best blue-chip defenseman prospects in the entire NHL. It shouldn't be that controversial. At number 14, Kulich. He was obviously in my top 10 players at World Juniors. He's been fantastic. 16 goals in 22 games this year for the Rochester Americans. That is an unreal goal pace. Does only have 6 assists, so he's just point per game. But when looking at him, 24 goals, 22 assists, 46 points last year with them in only 62 games. This guy has already proven that he can dominate AHL competition. I think he probably could play at the NHL if the Sabres really wanted to bring him up. He wouldn't be like 45, 50 points, but he could definitely play in a bottom 6 role. And going forward, again, only a 2022 guy. He has a shit ton of potential, and I think he's going to end up being a very good top 6 forward. Number 13, Simon Edinson. Simon Edinson dealt with a pretty serious shoulder injury last season. At the end of last season, I think he got surgery in the spring or the summer, had to rehab to start this season. One of the main reasons why he didn't even get a look at the NHL roster, why Yzerman went out and got like a Jeff Petrie and kind of boosted the decor at least for this season, because Simon Edinson isn't quite ready yet because he is a kind of a project in the terms of that he's 6'6", but he is playing very good at the AHL level this year. Last year, he had 27 points in 55 games. This year, that's up to 16 and 24. He's progressing along very nice offensively in the Detroit system right now. I think he's going to be a defensive beast, obviously standing at 6'6", being a pretty smooth skater. He's going to be able to cover a lot of ice pretty quickly, and that Twin Towers of Moritz Seider and Simon Edinson, don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but they're going to be absolutely fantastic for the next 10 years. And another defenseman that's going to be fantastic for the Detroit Red Wings checks in at number 12, Axel Sandin. I liked him coming out. I think he was my 11th or 12th best prospect in last year's draft process. He obviously killed it at Swedish Juniors that year. He had 16 goals, 20 assists in 31 games. This year, 9 goals, only 4 assists, but in 23 SHL games. He's goal scoring as a defenseman at that high of a rate in the goddamn SHL. This kid is a pure offensive defenseman. He is going to be running that power play for the Detroit Red Wings for the next decade. I think that he has potential to go north of 50, 55, maybe even 60 points. Again, it's going to be a pretty loaded blue line in Detroit because they have Seider already there, and Edinson and Sandin Pellikka. But he's very good. He's a very good player. It's going to be very interesting to see if the assists will kind of follow with those goal totals. I don't think at the NHL level he's going to be scoring 30 goals and 15 assists, so maybe he needs to work on his passing a little bit, but he is just such an accurate, and he actually has a pretty strong shot for a guy that's only like 5'11", that I think he's going to develop into a very elite offensive defenseman. At number 11, another guy from 2023, Gabriel Perau. Perau broke Austin Matthews' goddamn scoring record at the U.S. Developmental Program last year, somehow fell to number 3. He was my number 9 prospect in last year's draft class, and he's killing it at BC right now. He has 5 goals, 18 assists for 23 points in 17 games. He does lead BC in points as of right now, which is very impressive. They are an absolutely loaded team. Doesn't have the best shot on him, which is why he's below some of his BC teammates. There's going to be three other guys from BC ahead of him, but he is just such an elite playmaker. There is some concern still about his skating at the next level. That was the number one knock on him in the draft process. I still think that playmaking and IQ that he has is so elite and will make up for that. I don't think he's ever going to be a true number one on a team, but at 23rd overall, you don't have to be. I think he's going to slot very nicely into top 6 minutes on the New York Rangers in a year or two and really run with it and be a 60-plus point guy. Into the top 10, at number 10, Alexander Nikitin. Last year, he burst onto the scene. This guy was a 2020 third or fourth round pick, kind of forgotten about. Last year, he has 55 points in 65 games in the KHL, shattered their under 22 defenseman scoring record by a ton. I don't know if you guys know about Russian major hockey. It is insane to even be point per game, let alone defenseman 55 and 65 at only 21 years old. And this season, he has slowed down a little bit pace-wise, 30 points in 39 games. That is still insane, and especially on Carolina, they're going to develop him properly. They got him. They got a guy like Scott Morrow, too, at the NCAA level. They already have their next guys to replace. He's basically going to replace Brett Burns. Once Brett Burns is washed up, he's 6'4". He's a beast. He's very good defensively, fantastic offensive tool set. He's going to be an absolute stud on that Carolina Hurricanes team, and the Carolina Hurricanes are going to be good forever at this point. Number nine, Shane Wright. A little bit of a turbulent season last year for Shane Wright. Obviously started at the NHL level for some reason, was playing 8 minutes a night. It made absolutely no sense. Gets sent down to the AHL, struggles a little bit, then goes back to the OHL. He tears it up, 37 points in 20 games. But this season, he's finally finding his groove in the AHL, where he should be right now, honestly, considering Seattle does have a pretty, not deep forward core, but they have a lot of decent second liners. Shane Wright would probably be playing in a bottom 6 role, but you look at him, he has 9 goals, 7 assists for 16 points in 20 games. He's still progressing very nice. I never, even in his draft year in 2022, he was my number 3 prospect. I never saw the Patrice Bergeron comparisons that some people were making, but I still think on that Seattle team, he's going to develop into a very nice second-line center, maybe even eclipse Matty Beniers, and just be 65 to 70 points, very good defensively. He has a very high floor, in my opinion, given his defensive background and the fact that he is producing at a pretty high level at the AHL, but I have him at number 9. At number 8, going back to Boston College, Ryan Leonard. Ryan Leonard isn't scoring as much as, say, Gabe Perau, but he's goal scoring more. He has 10 goals, 8 assists for 17 points. This kid is just pure sandpaper. He is that ideal first-line right winger, gets under your skin. Not quite a Brad Marchand because he is 3 or 4 inches taller. He's 5'11" or 6 foot, but he is just going to be that pesty guy that is willing to get into the deep places. I don't think he's ever going to be the best player on a team per se, but he can be a fantastic, if he has the right first line center like he does right now with Will Smith, at least at the college level, he can be a legit mid-30s in terms of goals and assists every single year, playing very good defense. He's very impressed. He's impressed me at the college level in terms of his shot translating. So I'm still very high on Ryan Leonard. He was my number 7 prospect in the 2023 draft, and I still have that comparison of him eventually turning into an elite first liner. Number 7, we're going to 2021, the 2021 draft. Logan Stankov. The only reason this guy's not in the NHL right now is because the Dallas Stars have a top 3, top 9 in the entire NHL. When looking at that, because he has arguably been the best player in the entire AHL this season. He has 14 goals, 19 assists for 33 points in 25 games. This is a guy that had 97 points in 48 games last year in the WHL. The year before that, won WHL Player of the Year. The only reason he didn't win it last year is because Connor Bedard exists. But this guy, again, he is 5'8", but he has proven even at the AHL level, which isn't quite the NHL level, but against grown men, more physical style of play, he can still produce that at a high level. And he is a pretty physical guy. Considering he's 5'8", he is not this all-skill guy. He is willing to get into the nitty and gritty places and not afraid to throw the body. So when looking at Logan Stankov, it's going to be very interesting to see him either next year or the year after that. He's probably not going to play first line because Joe Pavelski can just age forever. He's going to be good forever. But when looking at that second line right wing spot, I think Duchesne is in it right now. He's probably gone. He's getting a big payday this summer. Him sliding in with Wyatt Johnston, that is going to be a fantastic second line going forward for the Dallas Stars. And I think eventually when Joe Pavelski, when he's 45, retires, he's eventually going to be that first line right winger with a Jason Robertson, with a Rupe Hintz, and he is legitimately going to be point per game, might even be 90 point. Part of that is because he'll be playing with 2 extremely elite players, but in his own right, he is a fantastic A+ prospect. At number 6, I got a guy that might surprise some people. I got Daniil Yurov. You might be saying, who is Daniil Yurov? He went 24th overall back in 2022 to the Minnesota Wild, and he is absolutely torching the AHL right now. He has 12 goals, 15 assists for 27 points in 35 games. At the KHL in his draft year +2 at only 9, he turns 19 like in a couple days, or 20 in a couple days. But when just looking at him, I'm going to throw it up right now on the screen. The stats of him compared to, he's ahead of Panarin and Buchnevich in terms of in their draft year +2 points per game in the KHL. He's on pace with a guy like Tarasenko. Kaprizov's numbers is in his draft year +3 in this graphic. But when looking at him and the other great Russian players, and Russian players have busted after putting up fantastic starts, but when you look at dominating the KHL at such a young age, the track record does seem to tell that you're at least going to be a stud. You look at the graph that I just showed. Even a guy like Kirill Marchenko, right now he has 13 goals, 8 assists, 21 points in 31 games, and Yurov's ahead of him. So I just look at him. I've watched a little bit of him. I can't really watch a ton of like full KHL games, but he's fantastic. He has all the tools to eventually be a elite player in the NHL, especially with learning under Kirill Kaprizov. That is kind of like the perfect fit. So I think Yurov is going to be fantastic and probably is the most underrated prospect in the entire NHL, just because people aren't really talking about Russians too much. At number 6, I think. Number 5, we got Lane Hudson. Lane Hudson obviously had an amazing freshman year at Boston University. He had 15 goals, 33 assists, 48 points. I talked about it in the last video. He broke Brian Leetch's goddamn freshman NCAA record that stood for like 30 years. Brian Leetch, 2-time Norris winner. Fantastic. Conn Smythe, Rangers GOAT in my opinion. So when looking at him this season, he's also playing fantastic. 5 goals, 14 assists, 15 assists for 20 points in 15 games. This year he has 8 goals, 12 assists for 20 points in 15 games. He's scoring at a higher rate in terms of goals and points. He's just a perfect package in terms of an offensive defenseman. There is some defensive liabilities, but I think he is such a good skater that he will be able to outskate some of his problems. He's not quite the most physical guy at his height. That might be a problem. But when looking at him with the Montreal Canadiens going forward, I think they have the defensive defenseman to potentially partner him with, or the two-way guys to partner him with, where I think you can maybe mask some of his defensive deficiencies. And this guy should legitimately be north of 60 points if he pans out like I think he will, and be one of the best offensive defensemen in the entire NHL. At number 4, Cutter Gauthier. Cutter Gauthier, 6'2" power forward. I really like his game. Some people are trying to tell me that he's not the best player on Boston College. I think he pretty easily is. This season, he has 13 goals, 10 assists, 23 points in 17 games at Boston College. He is the go-to guy in terms of the offense, in terms of getting the puck on his stick. He has that fantastic shot and scoring it. Yes, Gabriel Perau has more assists, only 5 goals. Cutter Gauthier is a beast. And you look at it last year on BC, when they didn't have Will Smith, they didn't have Ryan Leonard, they didn't have Gabriel Perau. They weren't that good of a team. They missed the NCAA tournament, but he still had 37 points in 32 games in his draft year +1. On a BC, I think the next leading scorer was like 25 points. So he proved on his own. He can create his own offense. He can score on his own. And then when you give him this talent, he's putting up like 0.76 goals per game. The kid is an absolute stud, especially on the Flyers. He's going to be one of their second cornerstone piece, depending on what pick they get this year. And my God, I think he's going to be 35, 40 goals most likely, and maybe even go higher considering the talent that Philly is building right now. If they're an eventual actual contender, he can go for 40, he can go for 45, and it would not surprise me at all. At number 3, Brandt Clarke. Brandt Clarke, I thought he was going to get an NHL run this year. You look at him last year, he had 61 points in 31 games in the AHL and the OHL. Then he had 23 points in 12 OHL playoff games. Absolutely cooked the OHL. I'm like, it's finally time. Get him to the NHL. They're not playing him in the NHL. I can kind of understand why you bring him along, but he's killing it in the AHL. Right now, he has 26 points, 5 goals, and 21 assists for 26 points in 25 games in the AHL. That is nutty. He easily could be playing at the NHL level, but they are loaded in terms of their defense core right now, so I do kind of understand it. But when looking at a Brandt Clarke, every level he has dominated in terms of offensively, and he's not like a Zellweger or a Hudson or a Sandin Pellikka where he's undersized. He is a 6'2" beast. So I think once he, in two or 3 years, when he takes over the power play from Drew Doughty, he is legitimately going to turn into their full number one and become a Norris threat, in my opinion. He has 65, 70 point potential, in my opinion. I don't think that's controversial at all, considering what he's done at every other level. So when looking at Brandt Clarke, he is the best defenseman prospect in the NHL right now. I don't think that that's that hot of a take. I think that kind of should be a consensus take. Maybe you go with Lane Hutton. No. Brandt Clarke all the way. Number 2, Will Smith. Will Smith, 4th overall pick last year. He was my number 6 prospect, I think. Yeah, number 6. Him and Benson were. I had Benson slightly over, but I gave him the same grade. He's great. Right now, he obviously has 8 goals, 15 assists for 23 points in 17 games, producing at a very high level for Boston College. And again, this guy, in my opinion, is such a difference maker, playmaker in terms of seeing the ice, making the open pass, making the right pass, not rushing through his reads. I think he's going to be a legit number 1 center. And when you look at him, partner him with a guy like Quinn Musty, whoever they take this year in like the top 3, if they get a Yzerman or Demidov, and you are absolutely running with a great rebuild with Will Smith as your number 1 center. I think he has more tools than, say, a Ryan Leonard or a Gabe Perau in terms of his skating, overall elusiveness, shot. I think he's a better shooter than a Gabe Perau, maybe not than a Ryan Leonard, but he's a much better playmaker than Ryan Leonard. But when looking at Will Smith, he's not a Logan Cooley level prospect, in my opinion, but he's just that notch below. Logan Cooley, I was very high on. I gave him like an 8.8 or 8.7. Will Smith still got an 8.5. That is a franchise center, and I think he eventually will turn into it. And at number 1, shouldn't be that much of a surprise. Shouldn't be that much of a surprise that I'm going Matvei Mitkov as my number 1 prospect. Right now, he has 11 goals, 15 assists for 26 points in 30 KHL games. That is nutty. That is the highest points per game in a draft year +1 ever in the KHL. And again, that's on top of him having like the best draft year ever in the KHL. You just look at this guy, and I said it in my review of him before the draft. His IQ and his processing is so impressive. He plays like a veteran. He plays like a 10-year veteran. I said it. He had the best IQ in the entire draft class. The shot is still although he's maybe not scoring at a goal scoring at a rate that I'd expect, I still think he's going to walk into the NHL and be a legit 35, 40. Probably not. Screw that. In his first year, when he's a rookie at like 21 years old, I'd set his over-under at like 42 goals. That's how special of a player he is. And honestly, his playmaking has really impressed me, especially this year. I think he's looking like a far better passer. People kind of labeled him as a pure sniper like an Ovechkin. I don't really think that that's that apt of a comparison. Obviously, he's not going to be as good as Ovechkin in terms of goal scoring, but I do think he is a better passer and playmaker than, say, like an Ovechkin. Not that Ovechkin's like a dog shit playmaker, but I think Mitkov is going to be that complete package and is going to be that franchise piece for the Philadelphia Flyers. Him and Cutter Gauthier on the same line. Mitkov a little bit undersized. Gauthier 6'2", 6'3". That is, assuming they get a center for that line, that is going to be, if they got Macklin Celebrini, dude, that is GG's. That's going to be the best line by far of the 2020s, 2030s. Just forget about it. So yeah, that's my full top 15 prospects. Let me run through it. Olen Zweig, Yuri Kulich, Simon Edinson, Axel Sandin Palika, Gabe Perau, Alexander Nikitin, Shane Wright, Ryan Leonard, Logan Stankov, Daniil Yurov, Lane Hudson, Cutter Gauthier, Brandt Clarke, Will Smith, Matvei Mitkov. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? Who would you move up? Who would you move down? I want to hear from you guys, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.